Hey guys, so welcome back, and today we are going to look at the circular flow of income. So, I'm going to dedicate this lecture and the next lecture to actually understand the whole process behind circular flow and also explain the various models which are there. And one thing which is going to be a little different this time is that unlike how we when I did circular flow in class, we just went straight to like we did all the models, but at the end of the day, the fourth sector model wasn't really emphasized and explained well. And the reason for that is you're actually interlinking so many items at the same time. So today what I want to do is, and the next lecture, we're going to build it step by step. So I'm going to first look at a one sector model, right? No one's ever heard of it, but it's actually a brilliant idea to understand the basics of, be it public economy, welfare economics, consumer psychology, anything. It builds on this one sector model. So we're going to build upon that. Then I'll add the second sector to it. Then when I'm adding the third sector, the relationship between the first and second sector, it just carries on forward. There's no difference to the initial sector. So when we're looking at the two sector, the one sector model doesn't change. When we're looking at the three sector, the two sector model remains the same. So we're going to build it upon like that. So just to make explanation really simple. And at the start of each model, I'll put up a picture of it, of the model, so that we can actually get a proper gist of what we're going to actually learn today. So let's start at the basics. The circular flow of income is, simply put, the flow of any economic element, I would say, because you're looking at many components. You're looking at taxes, subsidies, wages, factor income, capital. There are like literally any economic jargon could be placed in the circular flow and it would still make sense. That's how versatile the circular flow of income is. So, simply put, the flow and exchange between various players in an economy of these elements is what I would say is circular flow of income. And when you think of it, even when we were looking at the barter system, so just to put it into context, the barter system existed for basically the entirety of ancient history and somewhat modern history. It simply was the exchange of goods and services without any money. And it's that, like, we saw that there was an exchange taking place. In today's times, that exchange is still taking place. It's just that it's not in return for a good or service, it's probably in return of money, income, dividends, interest, like anything of that nature. Like where we used to replace goods earlier, it's now being replaced by money. Let's like alternate to a direct replacement. And the benefits of money, that's something we'll get into later on. But that's the basic gist of what circular flow is. It's the exchange of all of these elements between the various players in an economy. Now, who are the players which you're going to look at in the circular flow? So we have namely five players. You have your households, that is all of us, people who we are working and all. That's not the point here. Each household, each house, each individual, we all are what we call household. That's the civic society. Then we look at firms. So yeah, so firms are basically anyone who's making stuff, industries, your banks, services, anything of that sort. That's your industry. That's your firms. And we have the government. That's the third player. And government is government. The role of the government is to do overall development, where an individual looks at his or her own interest, a firm looks at a firm's interest and profits. The government's primary role is to take care of everyone's interest. And then we look at the international sector, the foreign sector. So the foreign sector's role is very layered. So on the face of it, the foreign sector's primary objective is to step into the places where the nation itself couldn't provide. So if you're looking at something such as oil, the production of oil is very limited in India. So we are dependent on a Middle Eastern nation, a Venezuela, a USA, to actually to import the oil from them. And that's where the foreign market actually, that the fourth sector, that's the foreign sector, comes in. They are trying to remove the inadequacies of the the domestic market. There's another role the foreign sector plays, and the foreign sector plays this role of actually providing financing for a lot of projects the nation undertakes. And the best example I can give you of this is China. The Belt and Road Initiative is what I would call modern day's biggest and most crucial project. Very vested interests. There's no point looking at the politics behind it, but understanding what they were actually trying to do is to build a complex network of roads, um, aerial routes, shipping routes, waterways, all of that, to make China the center of global trade. And what they ended up doing is they actually ended up financing ports and bridges and roads in a lot of underdeveloped nations, and that's actually helping economic growth and progress in these nations. There are debates on it, but at least they've got to start. That's where I'm coming from. So that's the role. And the fifth role, the fifth sector, is the financial markets. So your banks come here, um, stock markets also come in to an extent. Like, the role of stock markets hasn't been explored in circular flow of income in mainstream teaching of economics. It's a much more, I've used the word layered a lot today, so we'll just stick with it. It's a very layered sector. So the stock market, something which we could try looking upon depending on what you guys want. So that's something we'll keep for a later date though. So yeah, let's start with the one sector model. And it's really interesting to look at the one sector model. Like, it started out as a thought experiment in economics sometime around the 1900s, like, and it's a very underappreciated philosophy in my mind. It's called the Robinson Crusoe economy, and it's based on the book of the same name, Robinson Crusoe. And quick recap: Robinson Crusoe gets stranded on an island, has no way to come back, and has to survive on his own, right? And that's where I'm going to look at the first sector. Now, there are plenty of assumptions in Robinson Crusoe economy, but the main assumptions are, like I stated in its definition, that he's alone, he has no one to interact with. There's another thing that we'll keep for later. He is the only one who can provide for himself, and he's the only one who's going to consume whatever he makes. And yeah, there's no government, there's no interaction, as simple as I can say it. So yeah, why did I actually bring this up? It's to understand a system where there were only households. And if a household, like, we're looking at household as one unit here. So if a household were to interact with another household, it's basically like barter system where they exchange goods and services with each other. Here, the by Robinson Crusoe, because Robinson Crusoe made, let's say, fish for himself and he eats it. So there's no exchange of money, there's no involvement of money. It's just happening because he needs to survive, he does it. Similarly, when we come back to households, you can't expect a household to make everything that it needs. So there's an exchange which takes place. And until very recently, you didn't need that exchange to take place over money. So money is a very important concept which you're going to look at. But that's the whole idea of the Robinson Crusoe economy. And it's showing that a one person economy, like I would say, or a one sector flow model, so just the household sector, if you were to build a circular flow around it, would be successful to an extent, but there are many gaps. Like, you don't know which household is got an inherent advantage by having for lack of a better word, for having smarter individuals so they can exploit their resources better. Like, there are a lot of gaps here, and that's where we're going to have the government step in to try and minimize the gap. So I'll leave a link for further reading on the Robinson Crusoe economy. It's really great, and I'd really consider it, and you guys should take a look at it basically. So yeah, now when we come to this two sector model, this is the simplest model, and it's very easily explainable. So it's the household and firms. Now the main idea here is we're going to look at what they exchange between each other, and that's going to be the primary narrative running throughout this lecture. So the household at the end of the day needs to survive, and for surviving they need various goods and services. And how do they procure those goods and services? They need to pay for it, right? So that's what they need. And firms, they need income to survive. And how do they get that income? They create goods and services. Okay, so let's just build on this idea. So what happens is that for the firm to actually build those goods and services, they need individuals, or what we like to call as labor, right? So it's the households which actually provide the labor to the firms, right? So our parents, when they work, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. So, and for a second, we'll just ignore all those individuals who are working in the government, because that's something which we are looking at when we are looking at a three sector model. The government sector doesn't come here. So the household provides the labor to the firms, and in return, the firms pay an income to this laborer or the worker, right? So that's one portion of the whole model here. And then the next portion is, so that labor which is working at the firm, that person actually creates goods and services using the technology, the resources, all of that. But the person creates goods and services which are sold and bought by the household, and in return, the household is paying payment. It's making a payment for goods and services, and that is getting paid to the firm. So there's a very simple. When you look at the image, you'll actually understand it's a very simple process. There's an exchange of a worker, which is in return getting income, and there's an exchange of goods and services, which in return is getting a simple payment. And that's simply what the model is built for. And the last model which you're going to look at today is the three sector model. The four sector and five sector, we're going to look at it in the next lecture. So in the three sector model, the relationship between households and firms doesn't change. We're not going to look into it. Just play. If you have doubts in it, either leave a comment or you can reach out to me. My details are there in the contact option. So when we add the government sector to the existing household and firms, what happens is quite interesting. So, like I said initially, what is the role of the government? The role of the government is to provide welfare and to ensure the overall development of society. And for doing so by overall development, I would mean that the government needs money to build roads, bridges, to provide services, rations, the PDS system. There are plenty of areas where the government needs to get involved, and to do so they need money. And the primary source of income for the government is through taxes, and that's why there's an income tax which individuals pay. There is a goods and services tax which the firms pay to the government, which we pay to the firms and they pay to the government. And also for firms they need to pay a corporate tax, right? So the goods and services tax is what we call indirect taxes, because the person who's paying it is not the one who's actually giving it to the government. It's going via a firm. So it's a little more complex, and I'll get into that concept in the next lecture. So because let's not, like, by involving a direct tax and an indirect tax here, there's a huge loop which may actually happen. So we'll look into it in the next lecture. Anyway, so coming back to the idea of corporate taxes and income taxes, which are direct. So an individual pays this income tax to the government. So the households pay the income tax, and the firms pay the corporate tax. So this is the government's revenue source. And in return, what the government actually gives. So for all the households, in order to ensure the overall development, the government provides what we call welfare expenditure. So they are making welfare expenses to build roads, all of the examples which I said at the start. So that's what the government is doing for the households. And for the firms, what the government does is it provides subsidies. So the main form of giving subsidies to a firm by the government is they have what we call a period of tax holiday, so they don't need to pay taxes. That's a huge benefit which the firms have, and they also provide certain resources, raw materials at cheaper rates. And in modern times, the best idea is what we call a special economic zone. So it's basically an area where firms can set up. In the idea behind it is brilliant, but what the government actually tries to do is it gives them lower taxes, no rents, maybe free land. There are plenty of ways in which the government actually supports a firm. And coming back to the idea of a household member actually working in the government, that comes here. So the household provides again a worker or a laborer to the government to render their services to them, to work for them. And in return, the government pays an income to them. And that works similar to how it would work for the firm and household relationship. This worker relationship stays the same for whether it's happening with the firm or whether it's happening with the government. And that's how the three sector model will look like. Yeah, so the idea of circular flow is really simple. And the next lecture is going to be with the foreign sector, and then we're also going to look at what happens when the financial sector gets involved. So leave me any comments if you have doubts or anything else which you'd like to know. The like I said, there's a small description which I'll be put in my description. I'll be putting a link to the Robinson Crusoe economy. So just go through that whenever you guys have time, and I'll catch you in the next lecture. So see you guys.